Okay, YouTube, I'm going to show you how to take apart and clean this Colt 1903 Pocket Hammerless magazine. It's a 32 ACP and it holds 8 rounds. But it's similar to the 1911 other Browning design box magazines like this, where it's just a steel box design. The base plate over here is either stamped or pressed in. It has a follower here and the magazine spring that's coiled up in the inside there. So what we have to do is compress the magazine spring, capture the spring in there through one of the holes, and then allow the follower here to just float around freely. And we take the follower out, and then the spring will come out with it. So first we're going to press this down, compress it. This is a piece of nylon, just so I don't scratch up the bluing any more than it already scratched up there on the top. So we're going to compress the follower as much as I can down there. And then through the little holes in the magazine, I'm going to stick this cleaning rod, or this little brass pick, just so I don't want to scratch this guy up too much. So there we go, I captured it in there, and then just the follower here is going to come loose because it doesn't have any spring tension to hold it in. So now what I'm going to do is cover this with my hand, because the spring is just gonna pop out of there as I pull the rod that's retaining that inside there. So let me pull that out. I shouldn't be careful because this guy is a little bit nicer, so I don't want to scratch the bluing on it too much. So here it comes. All right. Here's the magazine spring, and it looks to be in pretty nice shape along with the rest of this magazine. This particular magazine has got to be at least 100 years old, but it's in phenomenal shape. Well, let's see. The magazine itself looks pretty clean, so somebody's kept this one up. The inside is a little dirty. A few surface rust spots inside there, but nothing major. But I'm going to clean this thing up, get it all nice, and make sure it's well preserved for the future. Alright, so first thing we're going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of oil. I use this Gun-X stuff. It's made by Ballistol, but it doesn't smell awful like Ballistol does, and it's a little bit thicker and does a little bit better job of preventing rust and also lubricating. But I'm going to take a little patch here. I'm just going to load it onto this cleaning rod here. It's a 22 cleaning rod. I use it because it's got a smaller tip than something else. And I use a larger patch just so you can really get down in the bottom of the magazine well. Any gunk that accumulates down there. So I'm just going to pour a small amount of oil just to wet that a little bit. And then I'm going to get this guy all the way down to the bottom of the mag. You want to use something that's some kind of brass cleaning rod just because you don't want to ding this stuff up. These particular magazines are in the hundreds of dollars range, so you don't really want to mess them up. People really want the original magazines, not the aftermarket ones, because they're kind of terrible for these particular guns. Alright, so we got down in the bottom pretty well. So I'm just wrapping it around here so it's got a little bit of cushion and I can really get in the little nooks and crannies. They do make those kind of gun tips, like little swabs and Q-tips and those kind of things you can use, but I'm sure you got a cleaning rod around there somewhere that you use for patches with your barrel. So I'm just going to do this one more time down here. Just kind of twirl it around a little bit just to get in any kind of brass shavings, powder residue, all that kind of gunk just accumulates at the bottom of these. This particular magazine doesn't look like it was shot. Hardly at all. I mean, there's a little bit of wear in the bluing on the side, but that's the nature of the beast with this particular gun, because the mag really just slides in there tightly. But if you look at the base plate, wow, that thing is nice and shiny. Okay, inside's sufficiently clean. It only looked like it had a little bit of dirt inside there. Yeah, I mean, this particular patch isn't too dirty, so I'm just going to use it to kind of clean up the rest of this. This is the follower here. This is what pushes the rounds up after, and the spring tension pushes up on this and keeps it retained in the magazine So I'm just wiping this off with oil now, just to give it a little bit of protection. And yeah, you can see in this particular patch, this mag isn't really dirty at all. So it leads me to believe that whoever had this before me recently cleaned it, or didn't hardly shoot this magazine at all. But it was well stored because it's not rusty or anything, but it's at least 100 years old. So I'm going to go through and clean out the spring the entire way, because these get a lot of surface rust and pitting on them, and eventually they're going to start to lose their springiness. I know Wolf makes a plus power mag spring for these if you're having feeding problems with the mag spring getting a little too worn down, but I haven't had any problems with these particular mags, and I've had a number of them, and they've all been feeding just fine. I did have one that was really nasty inside here, and I had to take some steel wool to get all the surface rust that was on it, because that was the mag that I got with the gun, and it was really really crusty on the inside there. So whenever you would stack rounds in the mag, it would feel kind of a lot more resistance than you would think, just because of the surface rust that was scraping along the inside of the magazine itself. So alright, we got all the way to the bottom. Okay. Alright, the spring looks all nice. Now I'm just going to wipe a bit of the excess oil off. I'm going to use this oil soaked guy to just wipe the exterior surface of the magazine off. Any oil, fingerprints, those kind of things. I don't want it to stay on the magazine and cause surface rusting and pitting. I'm going to use this magazine to shoot, but of course I want to keep it in as nice condition as possible. Alright, and I'm going to take just a dry rag and just wipe everything down again. For cleanliness, just a little bit of residue that's still on top of there. And I don't want to leave too thick of a layer of oil on there, because I am going to wax this magazine after. Just to give it a little bit of protection, keep the bluing on there so that it doesn't come off while I'm using it. Alright, so now let's put this guy back in there. So this is a little bit trickier. You want to make sure that the little hooked end right there is catches on the bottom of the magazine underneath the follower, like this. Oops, like that. And that's how it fits inside the gun. And there's some squared off side here that goes in the bottom. So we're going to load that in to the magazine, just feed it in there, and we're going to have to compress it a little bit and retain it again, just like last time. It's a little bit harder to do with this without a follower there, because there's nothing really easily to compress on. So let's see if I can do this in a reasonable amount of time, because sometimes they want to fight you, especially with a little bit of oil on your fingers like this. So you really want to just get it down. You don't have to get it down all the way, but you want to get it down enough that it'll hold the spring down so that you can get that magazine follower in place. So you see right over here, this should be good enough. I think I can get it in there fine. So I'm going to take the magazine follower like this, slide it to the top, and it's almost seated. You can see on the inside over there the magazine, the spring is kind of bent a little bit. So I'm going to put my finger over the top just in case something springs out of place. Pull this brass guy out, and then I'm going to fix the spring in there. Oh, there we go. There it goes. And it went right into place. You can see that the spring is pressing up against the follower like that. And let's just check the movement. Yep. Slides up and down nicely. Let me get some ammo to test. These are some some hand loads that I did. Let's see, let's just try stack 8 of them in there. And these are 71 grain berries plated bullet on once fired brass with CCI primers, but they're basically the same case specifications as the S&B 32 ACP. She stacks nicely, and time to take it to the range.